Hello and welcome to today's presentation where we'll discuss how to kickstart your analytics with Tableau dashboards. In today's discussion, we'll be working with a sanitized real-world grocery dataset provided by the data science company Denumbi. We'll review data across 2.6 million frequent shopper transactions in the context of a scenario involving Social Market, a fictional regional grocery store chain with several hundred locations. Social Market's objective is to create a flexible dashboard that will enable team members to analyze sales performance and identify potential issues. And in working through this scenario, we'll be able to illustrate the power of Tableau, the ability that Tableau offers to create flexible dashboards in order to address business problems as they arise. So we have done some initial data preparation, and the purpose of that is to create some calculated fields that will make it easy for Tableau to compare current sales to sales in the same period of the prior year. And that is something that requires a little bit of upfront work in Tableau, but once it's done, it's done. We've got the fields and we can use them for any dashboards that we choose to create. So now we'll focus on how quickly and easily can I create a Tableau dashboard that will answer a business question. And the question we're going to answer today is, how am I performing in terms of sales, and do I have any areas of concern that I need to focus on? So to enable this, I've created a parameter here, and that allows us to flexibly set how many weeks of data we're interested in. So right now we're going to look at the last 4 weeks of sales. And I'm going to drag in my date, and I'm going to start by looking at a fairly high level. So I'm going to look at sales by department, and I'm going to bring current sales into size, and that quickly I've got a little chart that breaks down sales by department, and the size of the rectangle indicates the relative contribution of that department to total sales. Now the next thing I need to do is drag my current sales into filter and filter on values that are not null. And basically that means I only want to look at the last 4 weeks of sales and nothing else. And there we go, we've got our chart. Now, we still have quite a few departments in this data set. So for example, grocery represents about half of total sales, but we've got some tiny little guys here as well. Makes it a little bit difficult to do the analysis at a high level. But one thing that Tableau allows us to do is create flexible grouping. So for example, I might look at meat and packaged meat and say, at a high level, I just want to look at those guys together. And there we go. I haven't changed the underlying data, but I've created now department group. So I can look at data by department or by department group. And this is totally flexible. If I change my mind later, I can change the groupings. If you disagree with my groupings, then you could go in and create your own that work for your purposes. But fairly quickly, I can just kind of go through and make adjustments based on how I would like to look at the data. So for example, I've got 4 departments that represent meat and seafood. I can just look at them all together. And we can see that the colors right now are changing to show the new groupings that I've created. I'm going to put deli and pastry together. I'm going to put nutrition in with drug. And like I said, you might disagree with these groupings, but you can see that we can create any number of groupings. So right now I've got one that's called department group. I could create another set that has a different name that can be used for another purpose. And the other way I can edit these groupings is by going directly into the fields. Now that we're getting into just a few leftovers, I'll go in here and I'll edit the group. So the others represent the ones that I haven't actually categorized yet. So I'll move dairy deli into the deli and pastry group, and I'll move pork into the meat group, which seems logical. And for simplicity, I'm going to let the rest of them just group into my other category. And we might find after a closer look that maybe some of them need to be moved around, but for now that's what we're going to do. So now I'm going to collapse my groups, and I'm going to rename them so that I understand them. So this one I'll just call miscellaneous other. this one I'll call Health and Beauty. Deli and Bakery. Produce, Floral and Garden. Grocery and Spirits, that sounds fine. Meat and Seafood. So now I've got a nice set of groups. And maybe I don't want to look at sales by department anymore. Maybe I just want to look at sales by department group. So I'll drag that into label, and I'll remove department from the label. And now we've got fewer rectangles to look at. Next, I might want to add a little bit more data to my chart. So I'm going to drag sales growth into color. I'm not going to color based on department anymore. I'm going to color based on year-over-year sales growth. And that looks pretty good. If I edit the color, it shows me that I've got a red-green diverging color scheme, and it's centered on 0. So basically red means negative sales growth, green means positive. The darker green, the more positive. So things are looking pretty good right now. I'm green across the board. So this is our high-level chart. Maybe when we start to drill down, we'll see some different information. Next, a few housekeeping things. I'll rename my chart, so I'll just say sales by department group. And I'm going to drag a little bit more information into the chart. So for example, I'm going to put sales growth into the label so I can see it on the chart. And I'm also going to drag sales as percent of total into the tooltip. And the tooltip, just to show you, is what pops up when I'm scrolling over the different data points. So I want to make sure that I have some extra information in my tooltip. So I'd like to have department group. I don't need the year. That's not helpful to me. I don't even think I need the dollar sales. But I'm going to rename this one. Sales percent total. And there we go. And year-over-year sales growth. There. So that's some good information as I'm scrolling over. Some of it is already shown on there, but we might find that it's also helpful to review in the tooltip. And there we go. We've completed our first worksheet. So now that we have one worksheet, we can use this as a basis to drill down to the next level. So before we move on, I'm just going to make a quick tweak here to label, because for example, in groceries and spirits, we have a statistic of 8.4%, and I just want to add year-over-year sales growth so we don't get confused later. There we go. All right, now I'm going to duplicate this sheet, and we'll create one that looks at sales by commodity. Commodity is the next level of detail below department. So I'm going to take commodity description, drag it into the label, get rid of department group. And this looks very messy right now, but the intent is to use this after we've already filtered on department group. So we'll look at that later. Right now, I'm going to get rid of current sales as percent of total because I want to create a similar calculation. So I'll duplicate this one, and I'm going to create one that I'll call sales percent of department group. So for example, if I have a soft drinks category, I want to look at how much the soft drink sales are in comparison to total grocery sales. So I just need to add a department group dimension here. There we go. So I'll drag that into the tooltip. And then I need to make some changes to the label. The label is looking a little bit weird based on the changes we've made. So the first thing I want to look at is commodity description. I'll get rid of this one. And that should look a little better. Okay. And I'm going to shorten this. So I'll just do year-over-year sales growth. So it's a little less crowded. Okay, now we'll edit the tooltip. We don't want department group anymore. So we'll just insert commodity. And we'll do sales percent of department group. There we go. Now I think I'm going to get rid of the year-over-year sales growth from the label. It's looking a little bit too crowded. We have it in the tooltip, so that will cover what we need. There we go. We've got our second worksheet ready to go. So for our next worksheet, we'll drill down to the store level. So we'll create a worksheet and we'll call it negative growth stores, so that we can really drill down on particular stores that are causing problems for us. So I will take sales growth as well as current sales, and we'll create a scatter plot. And we'll put store ID in the detail. There we go. I'll make sure my parameter is showing so that we can set how many weeks we want to look at. And again, I'll take current sales so that I can filter on non-null values, which means that we're looking at the exact number of weeks that we should be. We still have a few more null values, and that's because there are some stores that don't have prior year sales, so we can't calculate a growth rate. But right now I'm interested in negative sales growth anyway, so I'll just drag sales growth into filters, and I'll set it to at most 0. And those nulls will go away, and we'll get a plot that's a little more interesting to look at. Next, I want to add another dimension. So I'm going to take sales growth, and I'm going to duplicate it to make a similar field, which is total store sales growth. So right now these two measures are going to give me the same values, but later we're going to drill down to the commodity level. So I want to have a value that shows me how is the store growing overall, so that I can compare that against how is the store growing in that particular commodity. So I'm going to fix this at the store ID level. Something got missed there. I'm missing a sum. There we go. So now I'm going to take total store sales growth and I'm going to drag that into color. And I'm going to fix my color scheme because I don't like that one. I want red-green diverging, so it's going to be super obvious whether the store is performing well or not performing well. And for some reason it's reversed here, so I'm going to flip it back so that red is bad and green is good. And I'll center it exactly on 0. So now we've got a scatter plot where we can see the sales growth for a particular commodity on the horizontal axis, and then we can also compare it to the color of the dot to see how the store is growing overall. Right now, of course, the two measures are exactly the same, and that's because we have not done a drill down at this point. I want to add one more dimension, so I'm going to bring sales into size, so that I can have the size of the bubbles tell us something as well. Now right now it doesn't tell us anything new because we already have sales on the vertical axis. But I'm going to play with this calculation. Whoops, I don't want to edit the filter, I want to edit in shelf. I'm going to play with this calculation so that I can look at the total sales across the entire store. So I'm going to fix this at the store ID level. So then once we drill down, I'll be able to tell how is the store comparing in a particular commodity, and how does that look compared to how the store is doing overall across all commodities. So that'll be kind of an interesting thing to look at. Finally, I just want to make sure that my tooltip looks okay. So what do we have in the tooltip? We've got store ID. We do not need this information about total sales. That's too much information. I think we do need total store sales growth, so I'll include that. And we can also include commodity sales growth. Actually, no, I won't include that one because we already see it on the axis. We don't need that information. Good enough. Okay, and now we've created our third worksheet. For our final worksheet, we'll drill down further and we'll look at sales by sub-commodity for selected stores. So I'll name this sheet Negative Growth Stores by Sub-Commodity. Sub-commodity is the next level of detail below commodity. So I'll take sub-commodity and I'll put it in columns. And I'll put current sales in row. And I'll sort in descending order of current sales. We've got a nice little bar chart. And now I'll take sales growth and I'll add that to color. And again, we'll edit the colors and we'll put in our nice red-green diverging and we'll center it at 0 and we'll use color to determine whether the stores are growing or declining in terms of sales. I'll put current sales back in the filter again to exclude null values. And again, we want to look at negative growth stores. So I'll filter growth to at most 0. And now we've got our final chart. So we have one small task remaining before we move on to the dashboard. I'm going to create a worksheet that will allow us to reset any filters that we use in the dashboard. So I'm going to create a calculated field. I'll call it reset filters. Set it equal to reset all filters. I'll drag it in. And then I just need something that'll give me a mark. So I'm going to say count of store ID, and I'll set the shape to circle. I'm going to hide the title. And I'm going to hide the field labels. And there we go. And now for the fun part. We get to create a dashboard. So we'll call our dashboard Sales Drill Down. And we'll set it to desktop size. And then we drag in some containers. And the purpose of this is basically to divide our dashboard into some quadrants where we can insert our worksheets. Now we drag and drop in our worksheets. There we go. I'm going to take out these legends for now. I don't think we need all of this. I'm going to add one more container where we can put our Reset Filters button. There we go. We've got our dashboard. Next we need some actions. And the actions are what allow us to do drill downs. So I'll add a department group filter. And when I select a particular department group, that will impact the other fields, the other worksheets. And I also want a commodity filter for when I filter by commodity on the Sales by Commodity tab. I need a store filter that I can use on the negative growth stores tab. And that will filter our worksheet that's in the bottom right quadrant. And my final filter actually unfilters. So when I click on Reset All Filters, it's going to give me all my data back again. So I'll list the fields that might be filtered. And when I click on Reset Filters, it's going to give me all my data back again, which will make it a little bit easier for me to play around with the data. All right. I'm going to just tweak a couple more things. I'm going to hide this label, and I'm going to get rid of this header because it looks a little bit messy in the dashboard. I'm also going to go into sales by department group, and I'm going to get rid of the sales growth in the label. I think it looks a little bit cluttered when we get into dashboard view, and we have it in the tooltip, so I don't think we need it in the label. There we go. And there's our title. Now I'll take a look at this in presentation mode. Here we go. Here's our dashboard. So we start by looking at sales by department group. Everything's green. That means we're growing across all our department groups. But we'll take a look at meat and seafood because that's where we see the lightest green. It's the lowest growth, 1.4% year-over-year growth. We'll click on that and we'll drill down to commodity. We actually see quite a bit of red. So our two largest categories, beef and chicken, are both declining year-over-year. So we'll click on beef. We'll take a look. And now we can look at which stores are showing a year-over-year decline in beef sales. And here they are. Now most of them are shaded red. So that means that most of these stores that are showing year-over-year decline in beef sales are also declining overall year-over-year. But we do see some pockets of green as well. So for example, here's a big green circle. That means it's a store that has significant sales and is growing. You can see it's growing at 11%. Yet beef sales are declining by a huge amount. So we'll click on that and we'll take a look by subcommodity. We can see that choice beef is declining, lean ground beef is declining, and select beef is declining. So this is a real problem. So this might be a store that we need to focus on more significantly. Now I'm going to reset the filters and look at something different. So for example, let's take a look at grocery and spirits. How are we doing there? We can see again that two of our key categories are declining, soft drinks and frozen meat and meat dinners. So that's how we're doing on a 4-week basis. How did we do last week? We'll change our filter. Actually, last week we were green, so that's good. Our 4-week pattern shows decline in sales, but maybe we've reversed the trend. We look okay over 2 weeks. We look great in the past week. Let's look at the 12-week view. Kind of middling. All right, so we'll take soft drinks and we'll filter on that, and we'll see which stores are declining in soft drink sales. And here we see the breakdown by subcommodity. So we can actually filter on the individual subcommodities and see which ones are performing badly. So 20-pack and 24-pack cans of soft drinks are not doing well. Some of these item descriptions are a little bit tricky to read, but still, it gives us a great comparison. And again, we can filter on a specific store if we want to. Now let's reset the filters again. Sometimes we have to escape like this to get the data back in view. Let's go back to our 4 weeks of data. And this time we'll take a look at deli and bakery. We've got a super red one here, party trays. So it's a very small percentage of sales, but still worth looking at. Oh, that's interesting. Only one store actually sells party trays. Only one store is showing negative growth, but the growth is fairly significant, and it's in both categories. So it's in meat and cheese and in fruit and vegetable. As demonstrated today, there are several benefits to working with Tableau. First is the ability to efficiently process millions of rows of data without getting bogged down. We can also easily manipulate the data, for example, creating data groups, calculated fields, and parameters as the need arises while we're working. Finally, we can create interactive data visualizations using drag and drop functionality, making it very easy for various stakeholders to visually analyze trends in the data. There are also some benefits that we haven't discussed yet. One is that we can optimize the dashboard for multiple formats and screen sizes. So, for example, we can easily create a mobile version of our dashboard. We can also embed live connections to our source data, which enables us to keep our data updated on an ongoing basis so that we can continue analyzing our data in real time. Finally, we can share insights using this Tableau story feature. This allows us to package some of the things that we've learned from our data analysis in more of a presentation format so that it can be shared with other audiences. For any other questions about what was discussed today, please feel free to send an email. Thanks for watching.